Sonny Melendrez, Sonny Radio, sonnyradio.com.
Hello, this is Sonny Melendrez, and welcome. This is the positive side of the radio spectrum. You found us, the Sonny Melendrez Show, where every week we strive to bring you entertainment and inspiration through storytelling, fascinating guests, exclusive celebrity interviews, and it's all delivered with lots of enthusiasm. And have I got a guest for you? So, on with the show.
Sonny Radio, sonnyradio.com, San Antonio.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ken Slavin.
Somewhere there's music, how faint the tune. Somewhere there's heaven, how high the moon. There is no moon above when love is far away too. Till it comes true that you love me as I love you. Close your eyes. Let's pretend that we're both counting sheep. Close your eyes. Ah, this is divine music play. Something dreamy for dancing while we're here romancing. It's love's holiday.
Ken Slavin is a jazz crooner extraordinaire. His smooth style singing and highly acclaimed recordings have been enjoyed by audiences around the world. He's been described as a younger Tony Bennett and given the title Mr. Tuxedo Voice. It is my pleasure to welcome the ever-dapper, multi-talented, and smoothest crooner on the planet I know, my dear friend, Ken Slavin. Ken, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Sonny. I'm happy to be with you. You're the man everyone knows for being so uplifting and positive and sunny with the name Sonny and also a sunny person. I'm thrilled. I'm glad that you invited me.
Oh, great to have you here. And speaking of 30 years, this is your 30th anniversary as a crooner. And I love the fact that you always tell people that you were a late bloomer. Like 29 was some old guy.
Well, I know now in retrospect, I look back at some of those interviews, including ones with you that I still have in my archives. It spoken like a true young person. You don't realize really just that 29 isn't old. But what I always tried to get across was that so many people I know in the music business, they started at 16 or they started at 18 and they were in their high school bands and they did all those things. Other than being shortly in a high school band in my teenage years, I didn't pursue a music career. I was in journalism and public relations, but I loved to sing. I loved to dance. I collected old records and jazz records and all of that. And I secretly wanted to be a performer, but I never really, really allowed myself to try until I was, 29 years old. I mean, professionally, till I was 29 years old.
Well, here's the thing. And I ask everyone when it was that when they were their kid, growing up, when they knew that's what they wanted to do. But the fact that you used to sing, the fact that you listened to your records, etc., all that is experience, and your subconscious doesn't know the difference between standing in a cabaret or standing in your room with a record player. So you really had all that in you all those years, don't you think?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I actually probably had not looked at it quite that way, Sonny, but yes, you're right. Because it was a dream, but I was also absorbing. I guess I was absorbing things. People have told me, how do you know so many songs? How do you remember all those lyrics? Well, a lot of it literally is absorbing it as a young person. I mean, record playing, my first record player, I was 8. I wanted a record player. My mother got me one, and I had records galore and collected them all those years. And I guess you don't realize, maybe sometimes you get older and there's some clarity, or someone like you puts it in a perspective. But it was all learning, but it just wasn't like taking music classes or being in a classroom situation or being trained like an apprentice performer or something. So yes, I guess so. It was there long before I actually got the courage, to take that next step.
Sure.
I just hadn't really quite thought of it that way before.
Now, you mentioned your mom. I would imagine that she's been your biggest fan all along.
Well, she definitely was. I lost her later this month will be 3 years. But she was my biggest fan. If she could have been my manager, I think she would have been.
Mm.
She absolutely loved attending all of my concerts and telling people, going around at intermission, well, you know who I am. I'm Ken Slavin's mother.
Aww.
Yeah. And she gave me lots of advice, and she was in the front row for the concerts. I have recordings of a lot of my shows, and I can hear her because she made the loudest cheers. She just was so influential in my life, but also musically. My mother could not sing. She could not sing, but she loved to sing.
Oh.
So I would hear her singing and it would make me happy, but she couldn't. But she did it anyway, and that's what I loved about her. But she also loved music, and she was a great dancer. And so some of my earliest memories are dancing with her as a little boy before I was in school, a little boy. You know how a lot of little girls would dance with their dads on their feet? I danced like that with my mother.
Oh.
And my father played saxophone, so he would play the saxophone in the living room, and I would be dancing with my mother, and we would sing or we would listen to records. So from a very early age, I was exposed to that, and a lot of it came from my mother. And like I said, she was just my biggest fan, and I miss her on so many levels. But to have that kind of unbridled love and affection from someone like that, not only just as being a wonderful, loving mother, but your biggest musical fan that you wanted to please every time you performed because she was right there,
Sure.
there in the front row. Yeah.
Well, you and I met when I had first come back from Los Angeles, and I was on the air here in San Antonio on KTFM, and you were working for one of the big PR firms, the Atkins Agency, and you'd bring these different guests on the show, et cetera, and that's how we got to be friends. And then you started this other career, and you're kind of like Clark Kent. By day you're a super PR person, and by night you're this smooth crooner, and you even wear glasses. You take them off at night.
Oh yeah, exactly. Lately I have been. When you're online so much, you wear the glasses. But yeah, I often felt like I had a split personality, Sonny. But I also thought that the two careers went really well together, because early on, trying to get gigs and things, I used my marketing skills, my PR skills, and I had so many friends in the local media like you who were willing to give me a shot to come on and talk about the music or play my first recording and all of the things. But yes, and in fact, when I worked at the Atkins Agency in particular, I loved working there, and I started off being a contract person there and then part-time for several years because I wanted the freedom to be able to leave early in the afternoon to go prepare for shows at night, because the gigs are at night and I was doing events or playing in nightclubs or restaurants or whatever. And so they allowed me a lot of freedom there. But it was funny. I would be, all day in my PR role, press conferences, working with mayors or working with corporate folks. And then I'd be like, well, I've got to run. I've got a gig at 8, and I would run and do my gig. And then I would be Ken Slavin, the singer. And it made for long days. It made for, really long weeks. But when you're doing things you love, and I love both careers, it doesn't seem like work. It just seems like sometimes you think, I'm getting away with murder because I'm having so much fun.
I'm right there with you. Believe me, the fact that you're getting paid to do what you love and love what you do, there's nothing like it. Nothing. So take me back to when you first started your first gig professionally. When would that happen?
Oh, wow. I count that as the first actual paid gig. I started hanging out and trying to get band leaders to let me up to do a song a couple of years before that. But February of 1990, it was Valentine's Day. And for about a year leading up to that, I had been hanging out at an incredibly elegant establishment on the San Antonio Riverwalk called Dick's Last Resort.
Sure.
A totally crazy place. And George Prado headed up he still does, the famous Regency Jazz Band. I would go there after work. I was working for a different PR firm then downtown, and I'd come hang out with them, hear the music. And for months and months I did this. And then I started getting the courage up to ask if I could do a song. Well, I had been doing that for a while, so George knew me. And he thought that I had some talent. But he called me on Valentine's night, or the afternoon of Valentine's Day. He said, our singer is going to be performing the Star Spangled Banner at the Spurs game, and we need someone to fill in for an hour. And he said, why don't you come do this? I'll pay you $50, and then you'll have a real professional gig under your belt. So I went down there and I did it. I did not have enough material even to sing for the first hour, but I repeated a couple of songs. And then when he went to pay me, I said, oh, don't give me money. Take me to lunch and teach me how to get in this business.
Wow.
That first, and I mean, I was paid in advice. I was offered the money. So I count that as my first paying gig. And then I didn't really do much other than hang out with him and go to jam sessions until my birthday that summer. That was the birthday I turned 29. And so I guess actually my first gig, I was still 28, but I count it to 29 because I actually helped put a band together for the first time and put on a show at my own birthday party. And I figured no one's going to walk out. My guests are going to have to support me. And I did a show with another singer in town named Lucinda Vella, and we had a really good time. And I kind of count moving forward from that because that led to getting booked. This was at Chris Madrid's where I did the party. I think I told you once the hamburger crowd liked me. So yes. Chris Madrid brought me back multiple times to play there. And that each of those things led to finding something else. And 30 years later, I can't even count the number of gigs I've had. It's thousands, I'm sure of it.
Now, all these places we're talking about, because we've got listeners literally around the world, just as your music has been heard around the world. And these are places on the Riverwalk in San Antonio. And Chris Madrid's is literally an icon in the hamburger arena, and just a great place to go. But I have to ask you, during all this time, did you have a plan? Did you have a vision? Was there something that you saw yourself doing in the future, or was it just kind of taking one step at a time?
I would write things down and I would market myself, but my goal, I had a true, honest goal of wanting to be a full-time singer living in New York. That's what I wanted to do. And I really wanted to be able to record, travel, sing. I didn't want to do public relations work anymore. I mean, as much as I loved it, the goal was to be a singer. That's what I really wanted to do.
Sure.
I look back and I think that I regret that I didn't take a couple of leaps of faith that I could have back then that might have changed the course of my singing career. But I kept the balance of having the public relations job and the singing through all that time. I came very close to going full-time singing more than once, but I allowed certain things to hold me back. And then at one point in my life, it became an issue about leaving my parents because they were getting older and they needed my help. So I don't regret that. I'm glad I did it. But I can't say, I probably could have used some help from I never had a manager. I never had a publicist. I didn't have anyone to really guide me to get seriously into full-time music sooner. So, and I always felt that I had time working against me anyway, because I had started when I was, just outside of 30, and I felt like I had all this lost time to make up for. So what I did was I aggressively went after every gig I could find and started recording and trying to market those recordings. A lot of my heavy-duty work was before the internet took off. And in fact, when I got started, there was no internet. I think timing is everything. And sometimes it's like the right person hearing you. It was not as well thought out of a plan, maybe is what I need to say. I had the goal. I did a lot, and I did not see a couple of the opportunities that I think I could have taken if I'd had some guidance on it. I always felt like I was kind of a lone ranger doing this sort of thing, but had a lot of support from people, but there wasn't guidance in the career, let's put it that way. And I wasn't a musician who could get gigs on cruise ships or work full time playing piano or playing the guitar and doing other kinds of music while I pursued my singing. I'm a singer who needed musicians. And so, I mean, that's probably a long answer to your question, Sonny, but I did have the goal and the image was in my mind. And I really wanted to be in New York. I can say happily that the New York goal happened, and I have done multiple performances in New York. So that did come true. And I've done a little bit of performing overseas, and when I've traveled on cruise ships, not that I was booked on a cruise ship, but if I was on a cruise ship, I entered the talent contest, hung out in the lounges, sang with the pianist, did all of that. I've had a lot of wonderful experiences, but I do regret that I wasn't able to make that little crossover to really do it full time. It just doesn't appear, at least at this point, to have been meant to be. But I'm also still in my 50s, so who knows what will happen.
Oh, come on. You're very young. I just had Johnny Mathis on the show, and Johnny, as you know, is in his 80s.
Yes, he has an incredible voice.
He's going stir crazy in his apartment, but he sings every day, and he works his magic with his voice and his instrument. And I'm hoping you're doing the same.
Yes, I have to admit that lately, having taken a new position, I have probably not been as dedicated to my at-home rehearsing, but I'm starting up again. Yes, you have to do that. You have to keep listening to material. You have to keep planning shows and things. And so I've been trying to make adapting to this virtual world we're all in right now during the COVID scare and pandemic. So I have done a couple of remote concerts that were produced by other people, but I've performed them, and that has been wonderful.
Have you?
Yes, I have. In fact, most recently, I was selected by a woman who was running for Woman of the Year for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Mm-hmm. She asked me to perform, and they did it as a fundraiser, and it was set up at the Roosevelt Library, where they have a beautiful Steinway piano, and Barry Brake, my pianist, came and played that, and I was on microphone. It's just the two of us. They had socially distanced people in the room, but not very many, probably a dozen or so. And then the rest of it was just live streamed, and they had a really good engineer, and they raised a lot of money, and there was interaction, through the camera. I had a ball. I want to do more of that. In fact, since this is the 30th anniversary year, my plan had been to do a show at the Tobin Center. That is just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So now I really am looking for some assistance to put together a virtual 30th anniversary concert that may very well be right out of my living room. I don't know yet.
You never know. You never know. I think that the fact that we're in this virtual world, it kind of throws us into more creativity in how to do different things and how to interact with audiences.
One of the things that's happened out of this COVID pandemic, every field of endeavor has had to make an adjustment to remote and to virtual. But there are people who have music careers that I think are taking off in a bigger way, and they're really they're seeing some success that maybe they weren't even seeing when they were doing the clubs, because club gigging is hard work. And it's late night work, and it's constantly assembling your equipment and disassembling your equipment and all the things that you have to do. And you're dealing with crowds, and you're dealing with people who drink too much, and all the things that you do, and you love it. But, and really, truly, I have really been missing the gigs. I've been missing, being at home all the time is very, very difficult. But I've noticed a lot of people in the music business adapting to this. They're doing well. They've continued to make money because there are ways to make money doing it online. And I think they're having quote unquote downtime to create. Many of them are writing new songs and rehearsing. There's even software out there now where you can rehearse with your band. They can be all over the world if they have to be, but it comes together like a Zoom meeting, but there's no delay. So it's simultaneous. You can hear the bass, you can hear the drums, you can do all those things. There are friends of mine here in town, the King William Jazz Collective. They have something like a 20-piece band or something with horns and everything. I watched a video they produced. It shows them all in their little squares. Yeah. It's like the Hollywood squares, times 100
sure.
across a screen. And they sounded fantastic. And I would love to do something like that with an orchestra and sing that way. But what I'm getting at is, I guess there's a lot of new innovation happening in ways that we wouldn't have thought of before this pandemic.
Exactly.
And I am hoping to embrace some of those for myself, because we have no idea how much longer this is going to be. But even when the pandemic passes,
right,
this has opened. What has happened is it has accelerated what was happening already online. Because I've had great success selling my product online, and I've been on all kinds of download services and things. I can tell people truthfully, I have fans around the world who've never met me or been in a live show. It's all been online. But now that's to like the 10th power or something now. And I think that there's going to forever now be this niche. And there may be people who never ever tour or go in a club or anything, but they will have massive fan base online and produce online, and the technology will get better where the picture's clearer, the lighting's better, the sound is better. So
right.
I actually think so much beauty and excitement has come out of a really awful time in our lives.
I agree. And look at radio. Podcasting is the new radio. And more people are listening to podcasts, and they can listen to it on demand. I mean, right now, you're being heard. I can guarantee you this. You're being heard in 30 countries.
Isn't that amazing?
I know.
And it's by choice. They want to listen to this podcast. That's the other thing, too. They're really, people are getting, this technology gets you past the extraneous or having to wait for a particular program to come on at a certain time of day, and it's there. I mean, and in your case, you're doing simultaneous stuff, right? You do it for a radio, for KLUP, and then you also have it available for all eternity online.
Exactly. Yeah. And the great thing about it is that you're able to bring somebody to the party with one interview, and then they want more, so they subscribe, and now they get the next one. So was there any time in the last 30 years, Ken, that you thought to yourself, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore?
Yes. I think we all have that at one time or another, don't we, in our career? When it wasn't coming together for me to go to be able to do it full time, I'd come so close, and then a gig would fall through, or something would happen, or I would get so tired. There have been extended periods of time in my singing career where I've been working 200 nights a year and holding down a full-time job and taking care of my mother or whatever I was doing. And the reason I put myself at such a heavy pace was I wanted to be full-time. So I figured you're going to have to learn to take every gig you can find, because you're going to have to this is how you're going to live, Yeah. So I would take the $50 gig. I would take the $3,000 gig. People wanting me to sing at their barbecue, or wanting to sing at a bar mitzvah, or wanting me at a wedding, or to walk up with a rose and sing to someone at dinner. I would do anything anyone wanted me to do. So I had times where I got burned out from the energy expenditure. It was not because I didn't love it. I would be physically and mentally really tired. And I had two distinct times in my career where I became deeply depressed and I wanted to give it up. And one time I did. I gave it up for 8 months. And it was a deep, deep depression, Sonny. It was really bad. I went for some professional help on that one. And I just didn't think I was any good, and I just I can't give anymore. I can't do anymore. And it was total mental and physical exhaustion. So with a break, I got my perspective back. I used to call it Ken got his groove back, because that was a hard time. That was probably about 15 years ago. Or it was back in 2007. I can remember exactly when it happened, in 2008. It was after I had recorded a really, really intense and beautiful album, I'll Take Romance, with violin arrangements and everything. I spent a fortune on it. I spent about 2 years putting it together with Barry Brake. And then I went on this, advertising campaign in Downbeat magazine and all these other things, and nothing happened. It was just very discouraging. The other time where I simply didn't want to sing anymore was when my mother died. And I went into a very deep depression over that, understandably so. Even though she'd been very ill, and you don't want your mother to suffer, I missed her terribly. And it affected I didn't have any sense of joy. So I didn't sing. I didn't even listen to records or anything for several months. And then I perked back up, encouragement from friends. I don't think it ever can really go completely away, but these were 2 time periods where I felt like I just couldn't go on with it. And the first time was where I just really thought that I'm no good, I'm not going to perform anymore. And then when Mom died, so many things affect you when something like that happens to somebody that you love so much, that you just are kind of paralyzed. And that's what happened to me. But both times it came back. And you know what? I don't regret either one of the down times, because it also allowed me to reflect. I eventually started listening to music again and finding new things to learn, new music to learn. I reconnected with musicians, and I reconnected with family and friends. We all have limitations, but both times I thought maybe I'll never do it again, but that didn't happen. And I'm glad it didn't happen. I don't know what my life would be like without music. I think it would be very sad.
I agree. Did your mom have a favorite song?
She had many, but she had a favorite one that I sang, and it was not the one. Jazz musicians don't like it. They think it's corny. They don't, they'll play it, especially if I've hired them. I'll say, you will play this song. But it's the one, and I think I may have told you about this before. It was the first one I ever sang in public, and the first one I sang on that Dick's Last Resort stage, Mac the Knife.
Oh, the shark has pretty teeth, dear, and he shows them pearly whites. But just a jackknife has old Heath, babe. And he keeps it, yes, he keeps it out of sight.
And Mac the Knife is not a sexy song. Mac the Knife is not a romantic song.
It's not one you dedicate to your mother.
No. But what happened was, Mom and Dad, they came to all of my concerts. And Mom loved the energy of the song, and she used to watch the reaction I got from it, because I tried to own it, and I tried to make it Bobby Darin-like with the key changes, but Ken Slavin singing it.
Sure.
Mom liked the high energy songs. The ballads were okay, but she wanted me to be, up and fast and all that. So I had gotten feedback from jazz people I knew who thought, Ken, drop Mac the Knife, everyone's played it 5 million times and no one wants to do it. And so when I did my second concert, my first concert was in 1994 at the Carver. It was a fundraiser for the AIDS Foundation. I did it there as the encore, right? Second year, I didn't do it. I didn't tell my parents or anything, but I planned this whole show and I didn't do it. And when it was at the Carver as well. We had a wonderful night, standing ovation, beautiful show. My parents and all of my friends were waiting in the lobby for me to come out and do pictures and stuff. So when I settled up with the band, I went out there. And before I could get out into the lobby, my mother met me in that little vestibule that's between the the lobby and the theater where no one could
Yeah.
hear us. And she
Sure.
came right up to me, shaking her finger, because she said, "You didn't sing it." I said, "Mom, please." She goes, "You didn't sing Mac the Knife. People want you to sing Mac the Knife, and you better not ever do that again." I said, "Okay, Mom." So
Oh, that's great.
what's happened is I do it to this day. I don't end a gig without it. And I do that I do that in memory of her now, but it was because I promised her, and to be honest, people really did want to hear it. They expect it. It doesn't matter what the theme is. I can do a Cole Porter night, a Gershwin night, songs of romance and travel, but I always end with Mac the Knife, which is, probably the bloodiest song in music history, but it people like it. They like it, and my mother loved it. So
Now, you did a tribute to Connie Francis.
yes.
Tell me about that. And that was also a dream come true, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Connie Francis, is in her 80s. I did not grow up in her era. When I was born, she was, a big star. But by the time I discovered her, I was 12 years old. I remember precisely where I was. She came out on a TV special with Dick Clark. He used to do those annual American Bandstand reunion shows. I was 12 years old, and my parents had just gotten cable TV. We were living in Mobile, Alabama. I think, my dad was a Coast Guard officer, so we moved every couple of years growing up. Well, she came out on this show, and he had, there were all these film clips first about how famous she was and everything. Then she came out and sang a song, and I fell in love with her instantly. I said, "Oh, that voice, that beautiful, beautiful voice." So I asked my parents, "Have you ever heard of Connie Francis?" "Oh, yes. Whatever happened to her?" Because she was kind of off the charts by then. This was in the early 70s. Well, I started tracking down her records, and over the next, I don't know, up till now, I started collecting all of her albums, and there are tons of them, Sonny. She recorded over 50 LPs, and then if you add all the multiple languages she did and all the different styles, I just loved her. So all those years I learned about her, I collected her music, loved singing her stuff, some of her stuff. And then when the YouTube era really took off, I started a channel that was a tribute channel to Connie, and I would upload songs and things. Well, back in 2011, she contacted me. She had found my channel.
Wow.
Yeah, and she liked it. And so she put out an all points bulletin. It wasn't my real name on the channel. It was a different, it was a username. She put out an all points bulletin on Twitter looking for me. And somebody wrote me on Facebook and said, "Connie Francis is looking for you." I was like, "Oh, please." Because people knew I liked her. I said, "Oh, please." No, she is. So I went to Twitter, and then, I guess in a private message, she gave me her cell phone number. So I called her, and we struck up a friendship on the phone. We've talked over the years. Well, finally, 2 years ago, I got to meet her in person. And so I flew out to Fort Lauderdale. She lives in Parkland, which is part of the Fort Lauderdale, greater area. And she took me to dinner. I had dinner with her and about 3 or 4 of her friends who also work with her. And it was arranged by a woman from Baltimore Net Radio, which is a very successful online radio station. Her name is Diane Linden. She had a program called A Visit with Connie Francis. Oh, I missed that middle part. After I talked to her, they asked me to be a guest host on that program. And I did 4 pre-recorded shows that I recorded in my home, all about her music, her history, all that stuff. Connie liked all of those too. So this radio producer arranged this dinner, and I flew out to meet her. And then Connie said, "Anytime you come back to Fort Lauderdale, I want you to come see me at my house." Well, the following year, some mutual friends got married, and Connie hosted the wedding in her home, and they invited me. So I got to go to her home. This was last year, and got to hang out with her and to dance with her. I have a video of me dancing with Connie.
Oh, Ken.
Through the years, I've done little tributes in the shows. Like I'll sing "Who's Sorry Now," or I'll sing something, I really want, one of my recording goals is to do a tribute album to her, but it would be jazz-styled versions of some of her hits. It would not be in the 50s or 60s pop sound, but it would be the way I would do them. And I've told her about the idea. She likes it. So I'm hoping that will happen one day. But even if it doesn't, Sonny, it was one of those things, in your life where you really hope you can meet one of these people you just adore. And I got to, and if nothing else ever happened, what a wonderful thing it was to be able to do that. And to be with her in person and just to, rub elbows with greatness, because she's a great recording star.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, you brought so much joy to so many of us who continue to listen to your music. Congratulations on 30 great years, and here's to another 30.
Thank you. I hope I'm around in 30 years and you are too, and we'll be talking just like this, because look at you. Your career has gone on, and you've adapted through the years. You were, you're in the Radio Hall of Fame. All of your voice work, your motivational speaking, all of the things you do. You talk about someone touching lives and bringing joy. I can attest to that. You've brought it to me, but I've watched you. I've been in audiences and watching people jumping to their feet over the things you say. I think what has kept you going and kept you popular is your embrace of life and your joy in all the everyday things. And you find this when you talk to your guests on your program. You find the little rays of sunshine to talk about. You don't focus on negative things. You focus on all the good there is.
You're very kind. You're very kind. And I cannot remember the last time I interviewed somebody, and we're doing this interview via Zoom, that I've smiled the entire time. and look what I've got looking back at me. Another guy smiling back right at me.
Thank you.
Anyway, congratulations, and we're going to stay in touch. And I hope you don't mind me mentioning the fact that you now have another part of your career, and that is at San Antonio College.
Yes.
Where we are both involved, and you are the, what is your official title there?
I'm now Director of Marketing and Strategic Communications, very recent position. And when I found out that you are connected to the same work at SAC, I was thrilled. I was like, wow, we've known each other in different capacities all these years, but to be working together now, that's an amazing thing.
Who knew?
You literally never know. You never know what's going to happen from a relationship you establish.
That's exactly right. Well, Ken, thank you so much. And I'll see you around the campus.
Absolutely. Thank you, and continued good luck with your wonderful program. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ken. Well, that's my visit with jazz crooner extraordinaire Ken Slavin. You'll find links to Ken's website, his Facebook page, Instagram, and more by visiting sunnyradio.com/show. That's sunnyradio.com/show. And remember, you can subscribe to the Sonny Melendres podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you access your favorite podcasts. Until next time, I leave you with these beautiful words from Plato, who said, "Music gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything." Bye-bye.